Hello. Today I'd like to talk to you about a situational analysis, or what we call a SWOT. SWOT. Now we're going to look at this from the perspective of advertising, but the word SWOT, or the term situational analysis, is something that most business students learn about, right? So if you're in a marketing class, or you're doing a degree in business, or an MBA, and then in your workplace conversations, we tend to use this term quite a bit. So let's talk about it and look at it from an advertising perspective. Okay, so what exactly is a SWOT? A SWOT, or a situational analysis, is basically an analysis of the internal and the external factors of a company. And it identifies your clients' capabilities, customers, potential customers, and their business environment, right? So when you talk about capabilities, you're talking about the company, what exactly do they do? What are their products? What is the team size like? How many locations they have? What do they manufacture? If that's what your brand is. Um, who are the customers? At this point, who is buying products from your company? What is the scope of this customer base? Who else can be potential customers? And then the context in which the business operates. Okay, so when you do a SWOT, you're trying to really understand all of these different things about the company. Why do we do it? And let's talk about it specifically in terms of advertising, right? Before you create a campaign, you really want to know what you're dealing with. Okay, so try to have a good understanding of the brand itself. Try to have a good understanding of what people think about that brand. And then figure out things that are working for the brand, the competition, other kinds of issues around that particular brand, and then also the messages that will resonate with the customers, with the target audience. Okay, so the reason why we do an analysis before starting off with an ad campaign is to really have a good understanding of the brand and the context in which it operates. Okay, so let's move on and talk about the context. And the background summary that you would do for any kind of a situational analysis. This basically will help focus on the brand itself, and the brand's products and services. So for example, you talk about Amazon. Of course, Amazon has lots of many brands within the larger brand, and lots of different services that it offers. So if it were Amazon, then that's kind of what you would do. Um, you know, Narrow down, focus on the things that you really do want to learn about when you're doing this sort of contextualization. Also, at this point, you want to know, how is this brand being promoted, right? So, what are the different media that you use to promote this brand? How successful that has been? Who is consuming this media? That's the kind of information you really need to understand the context or the background of the environment in which this business is operating, and how it is being publicized at this point. Okay, you also want to look at past events that have shaped the company, right? So let's say they were there was competition, but then this company bought over its competition, or a new brand was launched, which really changed the company, or there was a specific ad that they launched and that really got them in trouble because there was backlash, right? Or hey, there was a serious situation where like COVID-19, and everything changed for the company because of that. And so those are the kinds of things you want to register, go back a good 10 years and learn about the changes that happened and what made or broke the brand, right? And then also look at the activities that they may be doing in the near future, and that could impact the brand as well, right? So let's say they're rebranding something, or they're launching a new service. All of that would fit into that last section that could change up the company and its position in the marketplace. Okay, so whatever research you can do to help you really understand the brand, and some of it might require a little bit more in-depth research, but that stuff really helps us, move forward with the SWOT analysis. Okay, so when we start to evaluate the brand and how it fits into the larger scheme of things, you want to try and understand things about the brand that you wouldn't otherwise know, right? So a company like Bubble Wrap, they started off as wallpaper, and then people started to use it to do bubble wrap stuff, right? To wrap things. And so, you know, there are features within specific brands that could have been added, that could have been removed, that could be changed up based on what the consumer likes it for. Okay. Then there are companies that do interesting work, right? For example, Uber, uh, or any probably, a company like Uber, they have, candy at the back for the customer, or, little bottles of water. And that makes it a little bit special. It's a special touch. And so people look at it differently. They look at that brand differently, and they like that brand over another similar brand because of those aspects that are added to their brand. And so think about what kinds of things this brand has done that has differentiated itself from its competitors in the marketplace. Okay. And then also, I mean, yes, it's not specific to advertising, but sometimes it makes a very big difference to look at the factors um, such as distribution, or good packaging, or labeling, or perfect delivery times. All of that is the unique selling proposition of that brand, and you want to register that in your records before you start working on their advertising. Okay. And then, of course, lastly, that you see there, review past customer surveys and feedback. Now, any kind of, feedback, good or bad, is important for us to note. Sometimes when you have bad feedback, you may have to, take that into account while you create your ads. And so all of this research is really helpful to figure out the SWOT. Okay, so let's move on to a couple more, and then I will actually go over what SWOT stands for. Understanding your competition is extremely important, right? So, who are the big players? Who is in direct competition with your brand? Okay, so that is something that is extremely important to figure out. um, Not only do you want to know who the big players are, you also want to know what their media strategy is, how their advertising stands against yours. And how are they um, advertising their product versus how are you advertising, and are they doing something really special? Learning about that. What media are they they're advertising to? Who is their target audience? Is it the same as yours? What is their unique selling proposition, right? So these kinds of questions are extremely important. Also to understand pricing. How expensive is their product versus yours? And if it's higher, is it worth that? If it's lower, well, is that their only unique selling proposition? So these questions need to be asked. And then also to remember that yes, there's direct competition, right? I mean, there might be two brands of clothing that might be very similar, but they're just two different brands, right? That's your direct competition. There could be two restaurants, both selling Chinese food, and that's your direct competition if you're a Chinese food restaurant. But let's say there's a pizzeria, or a Thai food restaurant or an Indian restaurant, across the street. So now that is not your direct competition, but it's definitely your indirect competition, right? So that's how I would define that. Within your service category, which is restaurants, who's your direct competitor and who's your indirect competitor. Okay, so do a lot of this understanding, learning about, um, you know, who your competition is, what context do they operate in, what is their pricing strategy. All of that is extremely important. Okay. And then do a really, really good in-depth analysis of the advertising that your client does, like the brand that you're working on does, and see what's working and what's a big flop, right? So you want to have a good understanding of, those strategies. If you're going to go in there and suggest your own, well, what is what they're doing right now working, or is it in bad shape? That understanding is very important when you talk to the client, right? Or you write up an analysis. So figure out what's working and what can be fixed, and changed up. Okay. There's also a target audience analysis, right? So who is the target audience? What's the profile, right? Who are being targeted at this point? Who are the potential customers at this point? Um, and, you really need to do an in-depth analysis of both demographics and psychographics, right? And then also understand, how are people using this product, all right, in their life, in their day. Where does this product fit in? So if it's a toothpaste, let's say, um, when do they use it? Is it in the morning? Is it twice a day? Is it more than twice a day? Um, you know, does everyone in the household use the same brand? Do the kids have a different brand? Is it the same kind of bristles? Uh, you know, so many little things to figure out, but I do a deeper dive to really understand your audience. And if they're buying the same brand of toothpaste again, 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 or toothbrush again, 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 well, that's a loyal customer. So understand who this loyal customer is and why they love this product so much, right? Um, and if there is any competition, why do they still choose your product over that competition? Is it the pricing? Is it the ads? Is it the durability of the product? Whatever it is, pull that profile together. Create that sort of personality that's going to help you understand who this person is, who are your brand loyal customers, and therefore, um, you know, how you should, create your ads and who you should target. Okay, so understand what is currently being done, then do your research and figure out if that's the way you still want to go or you want to change that. Okay, all right. So we've talked about lots of different things. Now, when you do a lot of this research, you then start to throw information into what we call a SWOT. So, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay. And the way we usually frame this particular box is like this, right? So, you write them in four quadrants, and then you start, sort of talking about some of this stuff, right? And so you've done a lot of that research. Now, just like in a creative brief, you do a lot of research and then you funnel down that information into one page. We do the same sort of thing when we work on a SWOT, right? So you break it up and then funnel down that information to in the best way you can to make it easy to read, to understand, right? And make it simple, clear, short sentences or phrases like you see on this particular slide. Okay. Now you can. This is a SWOT that you would do for any sort of business analysis. And you want to focus specifically on marketing, you can still break it down, and then you want to focus specifically on advertising, you can still break it down, right? So this sort of I just wanted to provide you with some sort of a understanding of what a SWOT is. Of course, this is not a business class, and I did not want to get really sort of in the weeds with all this stuff, but I wanted to just give you a very basic understanding of what SWOT stands for and why we do it, and what is all the research that goes into creating a SWOT for an advertising project, and really sort of putting that information in your proposal, if you had to create one. Okay, all right. And that ends my conversation on SWOT.